So I want to bring in Scott's original defense attorney, Mark Geragos. He's a legendary trial attorney. He's co-host of the Reasonable Doubt podcast with Adam Carolla. And I also want to welcome to NewsNation for the first time on camera, Bryan Spitulski. He is a former Modesto Fire Department inspector who did a full workup on that burned out van way back in 2002. Welcome to both of you. And Bryan, thank you for being on the show. It's good to have you on the network for the first time. Can I just ask you about the van fire? It's Christmas Day, 2002. You get a call about the van fire and you find a stained mattress. Tell me a little bit more about your discoveries.
There's a little bit of time frame in between the two events. The Christmas Day discovery, I just recovered the van. We took it to a secured area and held it until I was going to do a more in-depth fire investigation that didn't take place on Christmas Day. I wanted to get the engine company out of the alleyway where we were. We weren't in a good area. So we took the van to where you're seeing it now, a secure facility. It wasn't until a couple days later that I kind of tied this together with a news report that there was a van similar to this, kind of tied to the Lacey disappearance. And I called up my Modesto police detective who's assigned to our arson unit. And we went and looked at it, and we ended up bringing it into the Modesto police evidence locker and doing a full dig out of processing of the van, where we discovered the mattress in the back with a blood stain on it. And that's kind of how it went forward.
Okay, now tell me the discrepancy about testing those stains and what kind of blood results came back.
I can only tell you what I was involved in. So the first test, I physically tested it. I put it into the luminol, and it had a test positive, a presumptive for human blood. It turned blue. And then we took it up to the Department of Justice, where they ran another test on it. And their test came back negative, I found out later. But and then there's been multiple tests done to that same fabric, different samples, but from that same fabric that you're seeing right there. And they've all tested positive for human blood and for human DNA.
So, I mean, look, Mark Geragos, I hear that. And if I'm you, my blood is boiling. Were you ever aware of any of this, even the little fire that happened in a van not far from Lacey's home?
The whole thing is mind-boggling to me. I mean, in fact, I would like to ask Bryan, who was the detective who you talked to from Modesto PD?
He was assigned to our arson unit. I choose not to give out his name. There's a report authored by him and by others from the Modesto Police Department, but he has since retired, and I don't want to bring him into it, but there is evidence. This piece of evidence is retained by the Modesto Police Department, and there are reports generated by the Modesto Police Department regarding this. And I know that the fire report was somewhere in discovery, along with some very small thumbnail photos of my fire scene in black and white, small enough that they're very hard to understand what the photos are. But I do understand those were in I think it was 40,000 pages of discovery you had to go through.
Yeah, that was what was dumped on us mid-trial, so I assume it's part of that document dump. When you say thumbnails, how small are we talking?
I would say maybe 2-inch by 1.
Pretty, and black and white?
Yes, sir.
And did anybody ever, you also mentioned that there were tests that were done after the DOJ's test. Your luminol test came back positive?
Yes, sir. And actually this had kind of bothered me for a while because the DOJ test came back as a negative, but I physically tested one sample and it was blue, tested positive or presumptive positive for human DNA or human blood. And then I want to say it was 2015, I was called up by an investigative reporter, and he wanted to talk to me about this, and he presented the color photo of me holding that sample, and it was shocking because it made me feel finally this is being understood. And it was sometime after that the other DNA tests were done on the sample. I don't know exactly what the dates were, who requested them, how they got done, or what their full results were. Just that it sure has gotten everybody's attention now.
Well, and understandably so. And the investigative reporter, do you remember who that was?
Mike Gugdell, Gugdell.
Geragos, can I ask you something just about the upcoming hearing in just a couple of days? All of the things that Bryan Spitulski is saying right now, it astounds me that we're 21 years later and we're just sort of digging at these extraordinary details. Are they I would imagine they have tested this by now. If they're coming into a hearing next week, will the tests have been done? Will we have a mystery solved by next week?
Well, remember what happened, Ashleigh, at the last hearing. Dave Harris, who was one of the trial lawyers sitting next to Birgit, asked for 90 days. The judge said no. There is a Court of Appeals proceeding that was pressed pause on in response to the Innocence Project investigation. And the judge said, no, we're going to keep this on a tighter leash, so to speak, and only gave him a little less time. I would love to see the results of the other tests that were done. Obviously, if there were tests that were subsequent to the DOJ negative that showed positive, and that there was DNA, human DNA, that's a game changer.
It just seems to me that there would be nothing more important in this case than to put that DNA test at the top of the list and determine if it's Lacey's DNA or not. But are you telling me, Mark Geragos, that's not what's happening? It still could be weeks or months until anybody tests the DNA from that van?
I can't imagine. I haven't talked to them, but I can't imagine that isn't job one for the Innocence Project.
It just defies logic to me in all aspects. I have to wrap it there, but I'd really like to have both of you back because clearly the conversation between the two of you is fascinating, and I want to see more of it. Thank you so much, Bryan Spitulski, for being on, and Mark Geragos as always. Yeah, go ahead.
The one thing I want to say is I have no dog in this fight. I don't care which way this goes, innocent or guilty. The important thing for me is that this is finally being looked at. Whether it leads to one thing or another, I sleep much better at night because people like you are now talking about it, and Mr. Geragos is now aware of it. So whatever comes of this, I don't care anymore, to be honest with you. I'll still talk to you, but I sleep better at night now that you guys are talking about it. So thank you.
Thank you, Bryan.
And you know what? Getting to the bottom of this is job number one for us as well. So I'm very thankful once again. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.